call me Roy.
Hi, welcome to Roy's Book Reviews. Hi, welcome to Roy's Book Reviews. I am shooting this video on Martin Luther King Day in 2025. And it also happens to be the inauguration day for our 47th president. I just listened to the end portion of Dr. King's final speech that he made on the night before he was assassinated. Powerful stuff indeed. I highly recommend people listen to his words for inspiration and encouragement in trying times. As for the man about to assume the presidency, I won't get into any detail about him. You have come here, after all, to hear my thoughts on books, not my thoughts on politics. Depending on the book that I'm talking about, I will, from time to time, go into other matters of sociological impact or political. My very first book that I reviewed here was The Plot Against America by Philip Roth. And while that is a fictional story that's set in the 1940s, it was a very prophetic seeming book. At least some people feel it's prophetic, some people might not. There are many parallels between the events of that story and what was happening at the time in the United States and what is once again happening here in the United States several years later. But I'm not here to talk about Philip Roth. I'm here to talk about Danzy Senna and her novel Colored Television. Like Philip Roth, Danzy Senna is an author who, has a subject matter that's near and dear to her heart, and she returns to it time and time again. Philip Roth wrote about the Jewish experience time and time again, as Danzy Senna writes about the biracial experience time and time again. Philip Roth did get into kind of issues of race in his novel, The Human Stain, which I have not read yet, but I will eventually read it and discuss it here. Today, I'm going to talk to you about Colored Television, which, despite what I've just said, is a pretty lighthearted book. It doesn't delve into, really stressful, intense issues, such as her first novel, Caucasia, which I would recommend to those of you, who like to read thriller type plots. Where the stakes are, life and death. With the Colored Television, it's more about, domestic drama and family situations to be dealt with. So let me get into it by saying that Colored Television is an enjoyable read that I quickly devoured. Readers who are interested in matters of race, particularly biracial / mixed / whatever you wish to call it, identity, will find much of personal appeal to examine between the pages. Based on having read Colored Television along with Senna's novel Caucasia, I think it's fair to say that these issues are of passionate concern to her. No stone is left unturned. As for those less interested in such sociological matters, I would still recommend Colored Television to anyone who enjoys contemporary stories about the balancing act of marriage, parenting, career, artistic motivation, and the temptations of the other side, where the grass is always greener. The protagonist of Colored Television is Jane, a woman in her 40s who is an author, a wife, a mother, a teacher, a dreamer, and a desperate underachiever. I would also recommend colored television to those of you who like to read stories about writers, the writing process, the publishing process. I have discussed quite a few books here where that was the case. Writers like to write about themselves. So where was I? Jane's husband, Lenny, is an abstract artist who does not sell much art. So I would say that I highly recommend colored television to people who enjoy reading about writers and painters, the writing and publishing process, just as I recommend the novel Erasure by Percival Everett, who happens to be Danzy Senna's husband. I learned that little tidbit shortly before finishing reading colored television. But I digress. Back to Jane. She and her husband are living in a home of a friend of hers named Brett, who is a successful TV show writer. Therefore, they're living in a rather opulent home, much nicer than their typical circumstances. Since Jane and Lenny have been unable to get that elusive big break, they swim in financially perilous waters. They're frequently moving from one residence to the next, from one freeloading situation to another, as financial security eludes them. This is not ideal for their young daughter or younger son or the state of their marriage. For a year, while Jane's friend Brett is out of the country, they get to enjoy a luxurious homesteading, and Jane finds the focus to finally finish her second book that she has been working on for a decade. It is an opus dedicated to mulattoes. Her word choice there, rather than mixed or biracial. Publication of it will not only result in royalties money, but will also promote her to tenured professor status. All of the family's problems will be solved. They will at long last be able to settle down and sprout roots, which would make colored television a very short and uneventful novel if that's what took place. So you may have guessed that things don't work out quite so neatly. Instead, Jane's agent and the editor who receives the manuscript reject the sweater for labor, and all appears lost. That is, until Jane finds an opportunity to leave the lonely, frustrating, rejection-filled world of novelist behind and enter the fast-paced world of TV writing. Doing so means being dishonest to Brett and to Lenny and to herself. But a gal's got to do what she's got to do, no matter what her racial composition is or how much money is potentially to be made by turning her many multifaceted thoughts on racial identity into one sort of art and commerce or another. All of the subject matter referenced above is of interest to me, which you may already know if you've read my work. But to truly draw me in and keep my focus locked, it needs to be compellingly written about and feature characters who feel true. Danzy Senna does just that in colored television. So if you're looking for a lighthearted read that touches upon issues of society but doesn't slam you over the head with it, I do highly recommend this book. As I said, I read through it relatively quickly, at least by my standard pace. I tend to be a somewhat slow reader, but every now and then a story really sucks me in, and I read it at a much quicker pace than usual. And this one fit that description, even though, as I said, the stakes weren't really that high, but I was drawn into the world and wanted to see how things were going to work out for Jane and her family. So I recommend the works of Danzy Senna, both colored television and Caucasia. I recommend the works of Philip Roth, The Plot Against America. I would also like to read his novel, The Human Stain, where he goes into Danzy Senna territory and writes on the topic of race and racial identity and what well that entails. Haven't read it yet, haven't seen the movie, but from what I know about it, it is going to be right up my alley. Think that's all I have to say for now. Happy Martin Luther King Day, happy Inauguration Day, happy Shovel Snow Day if you have to do that today, which is what I did right before shooting this video here in New Jersey. Until the next time, this is Roy wishing you happy reading.